the world is going into a big recession. Pretty much every country around the world, possibly with the exception of China, is going to go to negative growth. And China will be lucky to hold on to 1 or 2% growth during this period. So we all go down. This is more a matter of what corporates are doing. There's a global suppression tactics are now going to be rolled out by governments. We're seeing it rolled out at the city and state level, and increasingly national governments will go for suppression. And I think in a couple of your stories already this morning on the show, you've seen that in advanced countries, this will run for up to 3 months. Steve Mnuchin was just talking about that for the United States. Now, during this period, though the governments are going to, in their countries, try and push down all social mobility, companies need to keep operating. While demand does crash, companies still have to find a way to keep operating. They've got to find a way to get components. They've got to find a way to get their finished products through to customers. You cannot stop that process. So what companies are doing is implementing their business continuity plans. They're splitting their teams inside their offices and inside their factories into Team A, Team B, making sure they never mix, keeping them apart so if they get an infection in one of the teams, they can still operate. And then they've got to go find somewhere in the world that can ship them goods. And that looks like being China. So at this point, it's got nothing to do with calculating the growth rate, though it might slightly help China keep its head above water. It's just actually what companies are going to be doing.
Richard, it's fascinating, isn't it? And you sound quite pessimistic about the forward view from this point on. You're saying that there's going to be no V-shaped recovery for any of the major economies in Asia anytime soon. So this could perhaps get worse before it gets better. But what does that recovery timeline look like? Are we going to be feeling the impact of this for years to come?
Oh, absolutely. Friday a week ago, what is that, 8 or 9 days ago, we went on the road around Asia by video conference. Normally we're on our feet and leaping from airport to airport, but we did it by video conference. And we had, I would say, a grossly optimistic view of how it would work out. We saw most of Asia holding on to some sort of growth this year and maybe global growth dropping to around 1.5%. But then I think we all saw the Imperial College report that came out at the start of last week, and we realized just how big the problem was going to be and how long it was going to be. So across the world, and particularly the 14 markets in Asia that we look at, there are some really big holes ahead and no V-shaped recovery. Now, if you sit in China, I know, and you watch the A-share market, there are some people speculating that a big stimulus in China will bring a V-shaped recovery in the second half of this year. We don't think so. There's no way you can get a V-shaped recovery in China with the rest of the world going into recession. So how long? It's going to be 2 to 3 years before we get back to the level of demand we had in our economies in 2019. That's a long, slow U-shaped recovery. It's not so much about COVID-19. With luck and with a vaccine, we'll be on the other side of COVID-19 by the third or fourth quarter, by the fourth quarter of this year. It's the wreckage and havoc done to corporate balance sheets, household balance sheets, bank balance sheets. That's very similar to the global financial crisis. And as we know, it took us 6 or 7 years to get our heads above water after that. So that is really what we're thinking about. Just think of this as COVID-19 as a trigger. But really, what we're dealing with is destruction to the commercial and financial system on a scale that at least equals the global financial crisis, if not gets bigger. And it picks up some countries that just missed the global financial crisis because this time round we really hammer down tourism. I mean, when we look at our spreadsheets, we're putting in there falls of tourism of 80 to 85% for this year for many countries. And, tourism plays a big part in driving these many economies around the world. You put a fall that big in and you really hammer down small and medium enterprises in these economies. So definitely U-shaped. There's no V out there anywhere.